Janice Franklin, and we're sitting in Theater 3, which is in the Quadrangle in Dallas, Texas, talking with the founding producer and the current executive producer and artistic director, Jack Alder. Theater 3 currently has a production of Pygmalion on stage. So, Jack, why don't you tell us about Pygmalion?
Well, Pygmalion, of course, is a Shaw play, and Theater 3 has done numbers of Shaw plays back to our very first season. We've done them over the many years since Theater 3 has been going, which is since 1961. But we had never done Pygmalion, which of course is the Shaw comedy. Most people really know it in its incarnation as the musical My Fair Lady. But the original play certainly has its own merits and enough differences that it's really fun, I think, for contemporary audiences to come and make a comparison, because almost everybody is familiar with what the story is about, which is taking the Cockney flower girl and through improving her speech and her societal manners, changing her from poor girl in the mud to a very glamorous and very fine, even morally very fine. It's sort of a feminist play in a way, which is astonishing when you remember that it was written in 1913. Not astonishing when you know it's Shaw, because Shaw was very, very much into the whole idea of the power of women and the specialness of women and women's independence, not being dependent on men for their living in any way at all. In fact, an earlier play we did, Mrs. Warren's Profession, the story of that has to do with a young woman who is permitted to study mathematics and therefore could actually set up shop as an actuary, which requires a mathematical background, and therefore be financially independent, whereas her mother, the only way she could be financially independent was to be a madam at a whorehouse, or at a string of whores. Mind you, very nice ones, but still.
What was the time period for that play? Was that the 19th century?
Also in 20th century, also 1912, 13, 14, in that era. So, and of course, St. Joan was a remarkably strong woman. The women in Devil's Disciple are a little more traditional, and interestingly enough, Devil's Disciple is the only play he wrote that was set in America. So I wonder what that means about his view of Americans. I'm not quite sure. But when I grew up as a kid in Yukon, Oklahoma, I used to go to every movie that came on the screen in the one movie screen we had. This is pre-television times. And the newsreels would every year show this funny little man with a long white beard and knickers riding a bicycle around a field, not even on a sidewalk or something, and then sort of taking off his camera in clown-like way and going like, so, you know. And then the voice would say, and famed playwright George Bernard Shaw reaches his 93rd birthday by celebrating on a bicycle. And I thought, what does that mean? Who is that? And that was actually my introduction to Shaw as a novelty in newsreels. But when I got to high school, by that time my family was living in Oklahoma City, and one day I had caddied, so I had a little extra money and money to do something with, and there was a touring production of Don Juan in Hell, which is actually the third act of Shaw's play Man and Superman, which is often performed as a separate piece and as a Reader's Theater piece.
Right.
Well, I went to see that performance. I bought a ticket literally on the last row of the balcony of the old home theater to see this because there were movie stars in it, and I was terribly attracted to seeing movie stars. It was Charles Laughton, Charles Boyer, Sir Cedric Hardwicke, who did I leave out? Sir Cedric Hardwicke played the statue. Agnes Moorehead played Doña Ana.
Agnes Moorehead, who later was in Dora.
Yes, right.
Of Bewitched.
But she was an original member of the Mercury Players with Orson Welles. She was, in fact, a very serious dramatic actress and a lovely actress. And they were all in evening wear, sitting on these stools, and they had reading stands, although they certainly had the play memorized. It was just the technique that they did this thing just from reading stools. Well, I sat there and I watched these consummate actors. They were all really good. I watched these consummate actors performing this work, and I suddenly saw that there was a permissible range of human imagination I had never known about. And I honestly consider that epiphanous moment, senior in high school, as to where things started having an education and taking charge of my own education by having intellectual inquiry going was a hell of a lot of fun and was going to be my gift from this. That wasn't the point I got interested in that much in theater. It was just the way to unlock the way into everything that was being discussed, because suddenly everything could be discussed, which was a wonderful gift that Shaw gave me. They made a long-playing record. I think it was actually wound up being on 2 different records. And I bought the records, and my parents subscribed to the Book of the Month Club. So when I went home that night, they had a complete works of Shaw, and I finally found that, because there was a lot I didn't understand. There was vocabulary I didn't understand. I didn't understand the whole issue of metaphysics that were connected with the play. And a lot of the things that were funny, I couldn't figure out why we were laughing exactly, you know. But it was the start for me. So I've always owed Shaw, in a very real way, my sense of what you can do and what you're supposed to do with human gifts, including the gift of imagination. So I've directed a lot of the Shaw that we've done. Arms and the Man, I directed Man and Superman. I've directed Don Juan in Hell when we did that, and I got to play the devil. That's a wonderful role, and a number of other plays, but had never done Pygmalion. So here we are at Pygmalion, finally, the ultimate Shaw comedy, and I was very fortunate in my cast. That's always 9/10 of a director's job, as you know. If the cast knows what they're doing and that they're willing to work very hard upon what they don't know and figure it out with you, you're just miles and miles and miles ahead. And the audiences are genuinely enjoying the show and have that same sort of reaction, I think, that I had as a senior in high school about, wow, this is really cool.